Hey folks, welcome back aboard. Today, I want to talk about something that stirs up a fair bit of passion at the dock and around the anchorage: full keel boats and the belief that they're automatically safer offshore. I know some of you are already gripping your coffee mugs a little tighter, but hear me out. Now, before we dive into the hard truths, let's lay the groundwork. A full keel, for anyone new to this, is a long, continuous keel that runs most of the length of the hull. It's often deeper at the front and tapers toward the stern, typically housing the ballast and sometimes even forming part of the rudder structure. These boats track straight like they're on rails. They're known for their directional stability, and they're often praised for their sea-kindly motion in a swell. Most of the old-school blue water cruisers, the ones we've all seen bobbing across oceans or tucked into far-flung anchorages, were built on full keels. And look, I get the romance. I've sailed on a few of those classics: stout, slow, and steady. But after enough miles offshore and enough different boats, I've come to realize that safe isn't always about what feels traditional. Sometimes the very features that make a full keel feel reassuring in theory can actually become liabilities when conditions get real. So, today, I'm going to walk you through 5 reasons why full keels aren't always safer offshore. This isn't about hating on classic boats, it's about making honest choices based on how we actually sail, not just on nostalgia or tradition. Let's get into it. One of the most commonly overlooked safety factors offshore is speed. It's easy to assume that slower boats are more stable, more comfortable, or even more seaworthy simply because they move at a more relaxed pace. But when you're sailing offshore, slower speeds can actually reduce your margin of safety, especially when it comes to weather avoidance. Full keel boats are often heavy displacement designs, which naturally means they're slower than modern fin keel or performance cruisers. While a full keel cruiser might average 4 to 5 knots on passage, a lighter, more modern hull might cruise comfortably at 6 or 7. That doesn't seem like much until you stretch it over several days. Over a week at sea, that difference can add up to hundreds of miles that could separate you from a developing weather system or allow you to reach shelter before conditions deteriorate. Weather systems offshore don't wait for slow boats. A low-pressure system can form, deepen, and move across your path with frightening speed. In those situations, being able to make distance quickly becomes more than a convenience. It's a safety tool. If a faster boat can outrun the edge of a system or alter course decisively, it might avoid the worst of the weather. A slower boat may have no choice but to ride it out, increasing risk to both crew and vessel. Another factor is fatigue. Slow boats mean longer passages, which means more days offshore, more nights without proper rest, and more wear on both the crew and the boat. That extended exposure raises the odds of gear failure, human error, and unpredictable weather. A boat that can get from point A to point B faster limits the time at sea and the risks that come with it. Additionally, slow speeds reduce tactical flexibility. If you need to change your destination or make an unscheduled detour for fuel, water, or repairs, a sluggish boat limits your ability to adapt. That kind of rigidity can be dangerous offshore, where plans often change with the wind and weather. So while full keel boats offer undeniable benefits in terms of directional stability and comfort in a seaway, their reduced speed shouldn't be overlooked. In blue water cruising, speed is safety, not because it gets you there faster, but because it gives you options. And offshore, options can be the difference between a safe passage and a survival situation. A commonly accepted downside of full keel boats is their poor maneuverability, especially in reverse or tight spaces. While this might seem like an issue limited to marinas or anchorages, it can become a real safety concern in offshore cruising, particularly during landfall, emergency situations, or when navigating unfamiliar harbors. Full keel boats tend to have a lot of directional stability. That's great when you're sailing in a straight line, but it works against you when you need quick, precise movements. The long underwater profile resists turning, especially at slow speeds or under power. In reverse, many full keel boats exhibit significant prop walk, pulling the stern strongly to one side regardless of rudder input. Some will barely respond to steering at all when backing up. In tight anchorages or crowded ports, this lack of control can be risky. High winds, current, or limited space might demand swift corrections or even a full retreat. If the boat won't back straight or turn tightly under power, you may find yourself unable to avoid a collision or grounding. The margin for error shrinks dramatically when your boat doesn't respond predictably in close quarters. Poor maneuverability also affects safety during emergency docking situations. Imagine approaching a harbor under deteriorating conditions: strong crosswinds, gusts, limited visibility. In such scenarios, having a boat that can respond quickly to throttle and helm can prevent accidents. A full keel boat may need more room, more time, and a lot more luck to complete the same maneuver a fin keel boat could handle with ease. Even outside of port, the limitations in tight handling can present hazards. Reef passes, narrow channels, river mouths, or situations involving crowded mooring fields all require precision. Full keel boats tend to wander at low speeds and may require exaggerated steering inputs to stay on course. That's not ideal when navigating confined waters, especially under sail or limited power. In modern offshore sailing, where solo or short-handed crews are common, ease of handling becomes a crucial safety factor. A boat that requires excessive effort or skill to control in tight spots adds to crew fatigue and increases the chance of mistakes. Fin keel designs, with their more responsive steering and tighter turning radius, often give sailors more control when it counts. So, while full keels do provide excellent straight-line tracking and a forgiving ride offshore, their limitations in reverse and confined handling aren't just inconvenient, they can directly impact safety. Offshore cruising involves far more than just ocean miles. How a boat behaves when things get tricky close to land matters just as much as how it rides in open water. Full keel boats are usually heavy displacement cruisers, built to carry provisions, gear, and fuel for long voyages. That weight brings a certain comfort in motion, slower roll, solid feel, and a kind of deep-seated momentum that can make a crew feel more secure. But the trade-off is that when the sea turns hostile, all that mass starts working against you. A heavier boat has more inertia. That means in rough conditions it doesn't rise over waves as easily. It plows through them. That constant pounding puts serious strain on the rigging, the hull, and the crew. Over time, the motion becomes fatiguing, especially in a cross-sea or when waves come from different directions. Where a lighter boat might rise and fall more gently with the swell, a heavy displacement full-keel boat tends to dig in, creating a more jarring ride. The physics are simple. The more mass a boat carries, the more force is generated when it slams into a wave. That can stress fittings, bend stanchions, and increase the wear on sails and rigging. In a gale or worse, that adds up quickly. The boat might feel like it's holding its course better, but under the surface, it's taking a beating. Another factor is acceleration. Heavy boats take longer to respond to wind shifts or helm input. That makes active sailing harder when conditions are changing rapidly. A sudden squall or breaking wave can catch a heavy boat off guard, simply because it can't react as quickly. The forces involved in bringing that weight around increase the load on everything: rudder, sails, lines, and the crew working the winches. And let's not forget recovery from knockdowns or broaches. A heavy boat might have deep ballast and good righting moment, but when it does get knocked over, it takes longer to recover. That delay can be critical in confused seas, where a quick recovery might be the only thing preventing further damage or injury. So, while the heavy displacement of a full keel boat brings a certain kind of comfort in moderate conditions, it's not a guarantee of safety in heavy weather. In fact, the very qualities that make these boats feel stable can increase the physical stress on both the vessel and its crew when the going gets rough. One of the most praised features of a full keel boat is its ability to track straight. These boats hold a course like they're on rails, resisting small shifts in wind or wave direction. That's comforting on long ocean passages. It means fewer corrections, less work on the helm, and a smoother ride overall. But there's a flip side to that stability, and it becomes clear when you suddenly need the boat to turn quickly. A full keel's long underwater profile is designed to resist lateral motion. That's what gives it such great tracking ability. But in an emergency, like avoiding floating debris, dodging a squall line, or maneuvering around another vessel, that same resistance becomes a problem. The boat simply doesn't respond as quickly as a design with a shorter fin keel and a more responsive rudder. This delayed response can make tight turns feel sluggish or exaggerated. In extreme conditions where fast, decisive steering is required, a boat that insists on going straight becomes a liability. For example, if the boat starts to round up in a gust or swell, and you're trying to bear away or correct course quickly, the full keel's resistance to turning may work against you. It's not just about emergencies either. When sailing in strong winds or cross seas, the ability to change course efficiently can ease strain on sails and rigging. A boat that tracks too hard might require more force on the helm to shift course, putting extra pressure on steering systems or autopilots. Over time, that kind of resistance wears things out faster and increases fatigue if hand steering. Another issue is heaving-to. While keel boats are often praised for their heaving-to ability, not all of them balance well, especially if sail shape, rig type, or loading is off. Once again, the keel's stubborn straight-line tendency can fight against establishing a clean heave-to posture, especially in shifting winds or confused seas. So, while tracking well is usually seen as a positive trait, offshore sailing requires a balance between stability and responsiveness. A boat that always wants to go straight might be comfortable most of the time, but when things go sideways, literally, you want a hull that listens to the helm. not one that argues with it. Full keel boats are often celebrated for their sea-kindly motion and their ability to heave to during rough weather. But the truth is, not all full keel boats heave to well, and when something goes wrong offshore, like losing a rudder or steering linkage, their design can actually make emergency handling more difficult, not easier. Heaving to is one of the most important heavy weather tactics a cruiser can have in their toolkit. It allows the boat to settle into a controlled drift, bow to the wind, taking the pressure off both the crew and the gear. While full keel boats are generally better at this than ultralight fin keelers, that ability isn't guaranteed. A boat's balance under reduced sail, hull shape, rig type, and loading all affect how well it can heave to. Some full keel boats might lie too far off the wind, or fall off unpredictably if the headsail or main isn't set just right. Another factor is responsiveness. In a boat that resists turning, setting up a heave-to position can require more trial and error, especially for short-handed or fatigued crews. The rudder angle has to fight against the natural tracking of the hull, and it's not uncommon for a full keel boat to wander in heavy seas instead of staying settled in one spot. That makes rest and repairs more difficult, especially during long blows. Emergency steering is where things really get tricky. If a boat loses its rudder offshore, a not uncommon failure during long passages or impacts with debris, the ability to steer using sails or a jury-rigged system becomes essential. Full keel boats, with their long, shallow-hung rudders or integrated keel-rudder combinations, can be very difficult to steer without that original rudder in place. Because the keel does so much of the directional work, it also resists corrections. Using a drogue, warp, or even dragging a bucket becomes far less effective than it would be on a more responsive fin keel design. Creating a steering system with oars, spinnaker poles, or other makeshift tools can also be harder with a full keel's deep and continuous shape. There's just less leverage available to affect the hull's direction. Boats with a more defined skeg or fin and a separated rudder are usually more cooperative in these situations. So, while full keel boats have a reputation for stability and simplicity, that reputation doesn't always hold up when steering systems fail or when conditions require a quick and reliable heave-to. In the harsh reality of offshore sailing, responsiveness and flexibility often matter just as much as tradition. So, there you have it. 5 solid reasons why full keels aren't always the safest option offshore, even though they've earned a legendary status over the decades. Look, it's not about tearing down these boats. They've carried plenty of sailors across oceans and around the world, but the idea that a full keel is the ultimate offshore solution just doesn't hold up in every situation. Slower speeds, limited maneuverability, extra stress in heavy seas, sluggish handling when it counts, and challenges with emergency steering. These are all real-world factors that can tip the scale when you're choosing the right boat for serious passage making. And in the end, that's what it's about. Understanding what you're really getting into, not just buying into a romantic idea because it sounds good at the dock. Sailing offshore is about preparation, adaptability, and making decisions based on how you actually sail, not how sailors did it 50 years ago. The ocean doesn't care if your boat has a full keel, a fin keel, or a carbon fiber foil. It just wants to know if you're ready. Thanks for sailing along with me today. If this stirred up some thoughts, or maybe ruffled a few feathers, that's alright. These are the kinds of conversations we should be having. Drop your take in the comments, especially if you've got miles under both keel types. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, fair winds and following seas.